At dawn, the Lakota tribe would leave. She had one night to choose, love or lose him forever. The sun was sinking low over the wide-open plains, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. A gentle wind moved through the tall grasses, carrying the faint earthy smell of the land. In the distance, the small Lakota village lay quiet, its teepees forming gentle silhouettes against the fading light. Smoke from the cooking fires curled lazily into the sky, blending with the colors of sunset. It was the kind of evening that felt almost magical, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something extraordinary to happen. She walked slowly toward the village, her heart beating faster with every step. She had never been this close to a Lakota settlement before. Stories of the tribe's customs and traditions had fascinated her for years, but now, seeing it all in real life, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The village seemed alive in a way that no story could capture. Children ran between teepees, their laughter ringing across the open space. Women moved gracefully, carrying water or preparing food over small fires. Men practiced with bows and arrows, their movements strong and confident. Everything felt vibrant and real, more than she had ever imagined. Her eyes were drawn to a young Lakota warrior who stood a short distance from the rest of the village. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair tied neatly at the back of his head. His face was calm, but his eyes held a depth that seemed to speak of countless untold stories. When he noticed her watching, he gave a small, polite nod. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a pull she could not explain. There was something about him that made her feel both curious and safe at the same time. She quickly looked away, embarrassed that she had stared, but her mind kept returning to him. The village itself was preparing for something that made the air tense with anticipation. They would leave at dawn, traveling to another part of the plains. She had heard that the Lakota moved frequently, following the seasons, the animals, and the land itself. The thought that these people, and perhaps even the young warrior she could not stop thinking about, would be gone in a matter of hours, made her chest tighten. She had only one night to understand the world she had stepped into, and perhaps one night to make choices she had never imagined facing. As she wandered closer to the fire, the warmth touched her face, chasing away the chill of the evening air. Villagers sat around the flames, sharing food and stories. Their laughter and quiet conversations created a comforting hum. She hesitated at the edge of the circle, unsure if she should approach. Then, almost instinctively, she did. A kind woman noticed her and smiled, motioning her closer. "Come, sit," the woman said softly. Her voice was gentle but firm, full of the quiet confidence that comes from belonging to a place deeply. "The fire is for everyone tonight." She stepped forward and sat down on the soft ground, the smoke curling around her face. The warmth of the fire eased her nerves, and she listened quietly to the sounds of the village. For the first time, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. She noticed the young warrior again, sitting slightly apart from the others, his eyes focused on the fire. Something about the way he observed the world made her feel that he could see her, truly see her, in a way that no one else had. Time seemed to move differently in the village. The colors of the sunset deepened, and the first stars began to appear in the sky. The sounds of the plains, the rustling grass, the distant calls of animals, the soft crackle of the fire, blended together into a quiet music. She felt herself relax, forgetting for a moment the worries of the outside world, the fears of the unknown, and even the ticking of time that reminded her the tribe would leave soon. She wanted to speak to him, to ask him about his life, to understand the stories his eyes seemed to hold. But she was hesitant. She was a stranger. And the night was almost too perfect, almost too fragile. Yet the pull she felt toward him was impossible to ignore. She found herself imagining what it would be like to know him, to understand his world, to be part of it even for a short time. The young warrior finally looked her way, and their eyes met. For a moment the world seemed to hold still. He gave a small, respectful nod, and she returned it, her hand trembling slightly. It was a simple gesture, but in that moment it said more than words ever could. Something unspoken passed between them, a quiet recognition, a spark of connection that neither fully understood but both felt deeply. As the night grew darker, the firelight flickered across their faces, casting shadows and highlights that made everything seem more alive, more immediate. She could hear the quiet conversations around her, the occasional laughter, the rhythmic thump of a drum in the distance, yet all of it seemed to fade into the background as her attention remained fixed on him. She knew that soon dawn would come, and with it the tribe would leave. She would have to decide, should she reach out and risk stepping into a world she barely understood, or should she watch silently as he disappeared into the morning, leaving only the memory of one perfect night? The thought made her chest ache. She had never faced a choice that felt so urgent, so full of possibility, yet so terrifying. The fire crackled and popped, sending tiny sparks into the night air. She imagined them as small stars, floating and disappearing, each one a fleeting moment of chance. Just like the sparks, this night would not last forever. She had to make the most of it, to live it fully, even if she didn't yet know what the consequences would be. The young warrior arose and began to move quietly among the villagers, helping with small tasks, offering assistance where it was needed. She watched him, admiring the way he moved, careful, respectful, strong. Every gesture seemed purposeful, yet there was a quiet grace to it. She realized that his strength was not just in his body, but in his character, in the way he lived and interacted with the world around him. When he returned to his spot near the fire, their eyes met again. This time she felt a sense of hope, as if the universe was giving her a small, precious gift, the chance to connect, to know, to feel. She wanted to speak, to ask him about the plains, about his life, about the stories that filled his eyes, but words felt too heavy, too formal. Instead, she simply sat, letting the silence stretch between them, filled with meaning that words could never capture. The night deepened, and the temperature dropped. She wrapped her shawl more tightly around her shoulders, feeling the chill but also feeling alive in a way that was new to her. She realized that this night, this moment, would stay with her forever, whether or not she ever spoke to him again. It was a night of discovery, of connection, of possibility. And though the sun would rise soon, bringing the reality of the tribe's departure, she was determined to make the most of the time she had. She took a deep breath, letting the cool night air fill her lungs. The smell of the fire, the earth, and the plains around her created a sense of belonging she had never known before. She felt a part of something larger, something timeless. And as she looked at the young warrior, she knew that this night, fleeting as it was, might change her life forever. Every laugh, every glance, every small gesture became etched in her memory. She realized that life sometimes gives rare moments like this, moments that challenge the heart, moments that demand courage, moments that ask a person to take a leap into the unknown. And she knew, deep down, that she was ready to face whatever the morning would bring. As the stars grew brighter in the sky, she felt a quiet excitement mingled with fear. She did not know what the dawn would hold, but she did know that tonight, in this village, by this fire, she had experienced something extraordinary, something that would stay with her long after the plains had disappeared behind the morning mist. And as the first hints of moonlight reflected on the gentle curves of the land, she made a silent promise to herself. She would not let this night, this connection, pass her by without giving it a chance. Whether it led to joy or heartbreak, she would live it fully, with courage, with honesty, and with an open heart. The night stretched on, quiet but alive, and the flickering firelight, two souls, drawn together by fate and fleeting time, shared a connection that neither of them would ever forget. And though the dawn would soon come with its certainty of departure, for this moment, for this night, they existed together in a world that was entirely their own. Night had fully settled over the plains, and the village was bathed in a quiet silver glow from the moon above. The firelight flickered warmly, casting long, dancing shadows across the teepees. The air was cool, carrying the scent of earth and smoke, and the soft rustling of the grasses made the night feel alive. The young woman stayed near the fire, but her attention kept returning to the Lakota warrior. He had moved away from the circle of villagers and was now seated near the edge of the clearing, gazing at the stars as if reading a story only he could understand. Something about his presence drew her forward. She stepped lightly over the soft earth, careful not to make a sound, and approached him slowly. Her heart beat faster with every step. She did not know exactly what she hoped to find. Maybe just a moment of conversation, maybe a sense of connection, maybe something more. When he noticed her coming, he turned his head and offered a small, gentle smile. It was a smile that held welcome without words, invitation without pressure, and it made her feel a little braver. "May I sit?" she asked softly. He nodded, and she lowered herself onto the ground, careful to stay close enough to feel the warmth of his presence, but not so close as to seem bold. They sat in silence for a few moments, listening to the quiet rhythm of the night, the crackle of the fire, the distant calls of animals, and the soft murmurs of villagers in the background. The silence was not empty. It was full of possibility, anticipation, and unspoken understanding. Finally he spoke, his voice calm and steady, carrying the weight of experience, but also a gentle warmth. "The night is beautiful," he said, glancing up at the stars. "It always feels different here than anywhere else. Quiet, but alive." She nodded, letting the words sink in. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Everything is connected. The land, the people, Even the wind feels alive." Her voice trembled slightly, but she did not try to hide it. She felt that he would understand, that he would not judge. He turned his gaze to her, and for the first time she noticed the depth in his eyes, the way they seemed to carry both strength and vulnerability, pride and sorrow, experience and hope. It made her chest tighten with a feeling she had never experienced before, a mix of curiosity and longing that she could not ignore. "They say you have only one night here," he said quietly, almost as if he had read her thoughts. "After dawn, we leave. Tomorrow, you may never see me again." Her heart skipped a beat. She had known the time was short, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. A lump formed in her throat, and she swallowed hard. I know," she admitted. "I wasn't sure if I should come tonight, but something made me, follow you." He gave her a look that was both gentle and knowing. "Sometimes the heart knows before the mind does," he said. "Sometimes you feel something, and you must follow it even if you do not understand it yet." The words touched her deeply. She felt as if he had spoken directly to the part of her that had been waiting for something, someone without even realizing it. She wanted to ask him more, to understand his world, to know what it was like to live as part of the tribe, to walk the plains and feel the wind as he did. But she also knew that time was slipping through her fingers like sand. He shifted slightly, picking up a small stick from the ground and tracing patterns in the dirt. "The plains teach you many things," he said. "Patience, respect, courage. They remind you that life is fleeting, but the moments that matter are the ones you choose to hold on to." She watched him, fascinated by the simplicity of his actions and the wisdom in his words. Every gesture seemed purposeful, every movement meaningful. She felt drawn to him not just because of attraction, but because he seemed to understand life in a way she had only glimpsed before. For a long while they spoke quietly, sharing stories in the soft glow of the fire. She told him about her life outside the village, the town she came from, the streets she walked, the family she loved. He listened intently, never interrupting, his eyes fixed on hers in a way that made her feel seen, truly seen. When it was his turn, he spoke of the tribe, the plains, the history of his people. He spoke of the animals they followed, the seasons that guided their movements, the ceremonies that honored the earth and sky. His words painted pictures in her mind of open fields, of night skies filled with stars, of life lived in harmony with nature. She realized that his world was both beautiful and demanding, full of challenges and rewards that she could barely imagine. At one point, he reached into a small pouch and pulled out a feather. It was smooth and light, its edges glinting softly in the firelight. He handed it to her with a quiet smile. "This is a gift," he said. "It is a reminder of the night, of the choice you may need to make, and of the courage it takes to follow your heart." She held the feather gently, feeling its weight and texture. She could feel the significance in his gesture, the trust he placed in her, and the responsibility she now carried. The feather was more than a token. It was a symbol of connection, of fleeting time, and of the possibilities that lay before her. The wind moved through the grasses, carrying the faint sounds of the village and the distant calls of animals. The night felt endless and yet unbearably short. Every laugh, every glance, every moment of shared silence became precious, etched into her memory as if the universe itself had slowed down to give them this chance. As they talked, she began to notice the subtle ways he observed her, the small gestures that revealed care and attentiveness. He adjusted a blanket over her shoulders when the wind blew, offered her a sip of water when she hesitated, and shared small insights into the ways of the tribe that made her feel included. Even though she was an outsider, she realized that he was showing her a world she had never known, a world she could be a part of if she chose to step forward. The night deepened and the moon rose higher, casting a soft silver glow over the village and the surrounding plains. She felt a quiet urgency building inside her, the knowledge that dawn was approaching, and with it, the tribe's departure. She had to make a choice, yet the decision felt impossibly difficult. To leave the world she knew behind for a life unknown required courage she was not sure she possessed. He seemed to sense her inner struggle. "Sometimes," he said gently, "life asks you to make a choice in a moment that feels impossible. It asks you to trust your heart even when your mind is afraid. That is the moment that defines us." She looked at him, really looked, and felt her heart respond in a way it never had before. There was fear, yes, but also exhilaration, hope, and a deep longing. She realized that the night they were sharing was unlike anything she had experienced, a connection born of chance, urgency, and truth. The fire crackled, sending small sparks into the night air. She imagined them as fleeting moments of opportunity, each one bright and alive before disappearing. The night itself seemed fragile, a delicate thread connecting them, and she knew that if she hesitated much longer, the chance would vanish with the first light of dawn. They moved closer instinctively, their conversation becoming softer, more personal, more intimate. She shared her dreams, her fears, and he listened with a patience and understanding that made her feel safe. He spoke of his own dreams and fears, of the responsibilities he carried as part of his tribe, and of the life he had always known and loved. Each word, each glance, built a bridge between their worlds, fragile but strong, temporary but meaningful. Hours passed, yet the night seemed both endless and too short. Every moment was charged with unspoken possibilities, with the tension of the approaching dawn, and with the realization that this connection could disappear at any moment. She felt the weight of choice pressing on her, but also the exhilaration of living fully in a moment that was entirely theirs. Finally he stood and extended his hand. "Come with me," he said softly. "There is something I want to show you before the night ends." She took his hand, and together they walked to the edge of the clearing, where the plains stretched endlessly under the moonlight. She felt the cool grass under her feet, the wind in her hair, and a sense of freedom she had never known. They stood together, side by side, gazing at the stars and the land that had shaped him, that had shaped his people. In that moment she understood the weight of the choice before her, and yet she also felt the beauty of possibility, the thrill of connection, and the quiet courage that the heart sometimes demands. And as the night carried on, they shared stories, laughter, and small gestures of closeness, knowing that with the first light everything might change, and that the night they had together was a gift that could not be repeated. The night was deep now, the stars shining like tiny lanterns scattered across the sky. The village lay quiet under the soft glow of the moon, and the plains stretched endlessly, shadowed in silver and blue. The young woman sat beside the Lakota warrior, her heart heavy with both longing and fear. Every sound of the night, the rustling of the grass, the distant hoot of an owl, the crackling of the fire, seemed louder now, each one a reminder that time was slipping away. She thought about her life outside the village, about her family, her home, and the world she knew. She wondered if she could truly leave it all behind, even for someone she felt a connection with stronger than anything she had ever experienced. The thought made her chest tighten. She loved the comfort and safety of the life she had always known, yet something inside her pulled her toward the unknown, toward him, toward a life that promised excitement, courage, and love unlike any she had imagined. He noticed the way she hesitated, the quiet tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes drifted toward the horizon as if searching for answers. "You were thinking too much," he said softly, his voice calm and steady. "Sometimes the heart knows what the mind cannot understand. Sometimes waiting for the perfect answer makes us lose the only chance we have." She looked at him, and for a moment the fear and doubt that had filled her vanished. His presence was grounding, almost like a warm anchor in the restless sea of her thoughts. Yet even as she felt drawn to him, uncertainty lingered. She asked herself questions she could not easily answer. Could she fit into his world? Would the tribe accept her? Could love survive when everything else was unfamiliar and difficult? He seemed to understand her unspoken thoughts. "Life is not meant to be easy," he said, tracing patterns in the dirt with a finger. "It is meant to test us, to challenge us, to make us stronger. The things that matter most often come wrapped in difficulty. Courage is the path to those things." She listened, trying to internalize his words, letting them settle in her heart. She thought about the feather he had given her earlier, the symbol of trust and courage. It was more than just a gift. It was a reminder that choices have weight, that moments are fleeting, and that she had the power to shape her own destiny. The night was nearly over, and the dawn was approaching fast. Every second counted. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill her lungs. Memories of her childhood, her home, and the life she had always known flashed through her mind. She remembered quiet evenings by the fire, the sound of her mother's voice, the laughter of her friends. Each memory was comforting, yet they also reminded her that this life, as familiar and safe as it was, might not be enough anymore. When she opened her eyes, he was watching her. His gaze was soft, filled with patience and understanding, yet it carried a quiet urgency. "It is almost time," he said, not as a warning, but as a gentle reminder. "The sun will rise soon. The choice you make tonight will change everything. And yet, do not fear. Whatever you decide, your heart will guide you, if you listen." She reached out and touched the feather in her hand, feeling its smooth texture and lightness. It reminded her of the night, of the connection they had shared, and of the courage she might need to embrace. She realized that fear had been her companion, whispering doubts and what-ifs in her ear. But courage was waiting too, quiet but persistent, urging her to take a step forward, to trust her heart even if the world around her seemed uncertain. The warrior shifted slightly and offered her a small, reassuring smile. "When I was young," he said quietly, "I learned that life is like the wind over the plains. You cannot control it, but you can choose to follow it, to let it carry you, to trust where it leads. Tonight, you have that choice. Follow your heart, and you will not be lost." Deep within her, she felt the words resonate deep within her. She thought about the bond that had grown between them over the course of the night, the shared laughter, the quiet moments of understanding, the stories of life and tradition. It was a bond that felt rare, a connection that transcended the differences between their worlds, and yet it was fragile, hanging by the thin thread of time. When dawn came, that thread could break forever. As she considered her choice, she also reflected on his courage. He had trusted her from the beginning, welcomed her into his world even when she was a stranger, and shown her kindness, patience, and respect. That trust weighed heavily on her, reminding her that love was not just a feeling. It was also a commitment, a promise, and an act of bravery. She thought about what it would mean to leave her old life behind, the comfort and security of home, the familiar streets, the people she loved. All of it would be left behind for a life filled with uncertainty. Yet alongside that fear was the thrill of adventure, of belonging to a world she had only glimpsed, of walking the plains, learning the ways of the tribe, and sharing a life with someone who understood her in ways she had never known. Time seemed to slow as the first hints of dawn touched the horizon. The colors were soft, pale shades of pink and gold, and the plains glowed under the early light. She felt the weight of urgency pressing against her chest, reminding her that the moment for decision was now. Every heartbeat felt amplified, every breath heavier with the significance of choice. He stood quietly and offered her his hand again. "We will move soon," he said softly, "and I want you to know that whatever you choose, it will be respected. But if your heart calls you to follow, then you must answer." She looked at him, taking in the strength, patience, and sincerity in his eyes. She felt a deep stirring in her chest, a mix of fear and hope, doubt and courage. She realized that the night had already changed her. She was no longer the same person who had arrived at the village hours ago. Something inside her had shifted. A quiet understanding that life is about moments like this, choices like this, and love that demands bravery. For a long moment she hesitated, her fingers tightening around the feather he had given her. She thought of all the possible outcomes. Regret if she stayed in her old life, fear if she stepped forward, joy if she embraced the unknown. The wind moved through the grasses, whispering gently around them, and she felt as if the world itself was urging her to choose. Finally, she exhaled slowly, letting the tension flow out of her body. She met his gaze and saw a quiet encouragement, a patience that reminded her that she was not alone. She realized that love, like the night, was fleeting and fragile, but also beautiful and transformative. She understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. The warrior reached out and placed his hand over hers, the warmth of his touch grounding her, giving her the strength to face what lay ahead. "Whatever you decide," he said softly, "know that this night, this moment, will always be with you. And sometimes the heart knows the path even when the mind is afraid." She nodded, feeling tears welling in her eyes. They were tears of fear, of longing, of hope, and of the recognition that life was asking her to take a leap she had never imagined. She held the feather tightly, feeling its lightness and significance, and let herself breathe deeply, centering herself for the choice that would define her future. As the horizon grew brighter, she realized that the dawn was coming, and with it, the tribe would leave. The night had been magical, full of laughter, connection, and understanding. But now she understood that everything depended on the choice she was about to make. Her heart was ready, her courage awakened, and her mind clear. She knew she could no longer wait. And in that quiet, sacred moment on the plains, she prepared to step into the unknown, guided by the bond she had formed, the trust he had given her, and the love that had grown in the short span of one unforgettable night. The first light of dawn would soon arrive, and with it the answer to the question that had been weighing on her heart all night. The first light of dawn touched the horizon, painting the sky with gentle shades of gold and pink. The plains, quiet and still under the soft morning glow, seemed almost magical. The teepees of the Lakota village were bathed in warm light, smoke from the fires curling slowly upward into the sky. The world felt calm. Yet, for the young woman, Her heart raced as if the wind itself had entered her chest. The night that had been full of whispers, laughter, and shared stories was ending, and with it came the most important moment of her life. She stood at the edge of the village, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The feather he had given her the night before was still clutched in her hand. It felt heavier now than it had in the soft firelight. It carried the weight of a decision she could no longer delay. She looked toward the Lakota warrior, who was moving about the camp, preparing for the journey ahead. His movements were calm and purposeful, yet she sensed the quiet tension in his heart as well. Time was slipping away, and every second brought them closer to the moment of parting. She wanted to speak, to tell him how she felt, but the words seemed fragile and small compared to the enormity of the moment. The morning air was crisp and fresh, carrying the faint scent of dew in the earth. Birds began to stir in the distance, their songs a soft accompaniment to the rhythm of her heartbeat. She realized that this day would decide everything, whether she would remain in the life she had always known or step into an entirely new world. He noticed her standing apart and approached quietly, his eyes warm but serious. "The sun is rising," he said softly. "Soon we will leave, and I need to know, will you come with us, or will you stay behind?" The question, spoken simply yet with weight, made her heart pound. She had been thinking about this moment all night, imagining the choice, wrestling with fear and hope. Now that it had arrived, it felt almost impossible. To say yes meant leaving behind everything familiar, her home, her family, her friends. To say no meant losing him forever, letting the connection they had built over the night slip away like smoke into the morning air. She took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment to calm the storm inside her. Memories of the night flooded back. The warmth of the fire, the quiet moments of understanding, the laughter, the stories, the shared silences. Every heartbeat, every glance, every gesture had drawn her closer to him, to a world she had only glimpsed but already felt a part of. Opening her eyes, she looked at him and saw the patience and understanding there. He was not rushing her, not pressuring her. He was offering her a choice, trusting her to follow her heart. That trust, more than anything else, touched her deeply. She realized that love was not just a feeling. It was courage, trust, and the willingness to step into the unknown. She thought of the feather still in her hand. It symbolized everything the night had been: connection, courage, fleeting time, and the chance to make a choice that could change her life. Holding it tightly, she felt the pull of the plains, the call of adventure, and the warmth of his presence. Her fear was still there, whispering doubts, but it was no longer louder than the voice of her heart. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling but steady. I will come with you," she said, the words breaking through the tension like sunlight through clouds. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want to be with you. I want to try, even if it's hard, even if it's uncertain." He looked at her, his expression softening, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The wind moved gently through the grasses, carrying their shared silence across the plains. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand in his grip firm yet gentle. "You have made the bravest choice," he said quietly. "It is not easy to step into the unknown, but sometimes it is the only path that leads to life, to love, to truth." Her heart soared as relief, excitement, and joy washed over her. The fear had not disappeared entirely, but it was no longer paralyzing. She felt alive in a way she had never known before, as if every nerve, every heartbeat, every breath was infused with possibility. She realized that love was not about certainty. It was about trust, courage, and the willingness to embrace life fully, even when the path ahead was unknown. The villagers were beginning to stir, preparing for the journey ahead. The teepees were being packed, horses readied, and supplies gathered. She noticed the way the tribe moved together, coordinated, efficient, yet filled with quiet respect and understanding. She felt a sense of belonging even as an outsider, knowing that her choice to step forward was being honored. He guided her to the edge of the camp, where their horses were waiting. The morning light highlighted the plains stretching endlessly beyond, the golden grasses swaying in the gentle breeze. She mounted her horse, feeling the unfamiliar weight of responsibility and the thrill of adventure. He mounted beside her, and for a moment they rode silently, side by side, letting the wind and the open land speak for them. As they moved away from the village, she took a deep breath, feeling the freedom and uncertainty that came with her choice. She thought about the night that had brought them together, the connection that had grown so quickly and deeply, and the courage it had taken to follow her heart. She realized that love was not about certainty or safety. It was about being willing to face fear and step forward, even when the outcome was unknown. The sun rose higher, bathing the plains in golden light, and she felt a quiet peace settle over her. The horizon stretched endlessly, filled with possibility. The world was vast, full of challenges and beauty, and she was no longer afraid to face it. She had chosen love, and with it came the promise of life, adventure, and the deep connection she had felt since the first moment she had seen him. He glanced at her, a smile touching his lips, and she returned it, feeling the bond between them strengthen with every passing second. They rode together not just as companions, but as partners stepping into a life that was uncertain, yet full of promise. Every movement, every glance, every shared breath reinforced the choice she had made and the courage it had required. As the village disappeared behind them, carried by the morning mist and the soft glow of the rising sun, she realized that her life had changed forever. The decision she had faced, once terrifying and overwhelming, now felt like the most natural thing in the world. Love had demanded courage, and she had answered its call. The plains stretched endlessly before them, a landscape of possibilities, challenges, and beauty. She knew there would be difficulties ahead, moments of doubt, and times when she would question her choice. But she also knew that the connection they shared, born in one magical night, would guide them through whatever lay ahead. The young woman leaned slightly toward him, feeling the warmth of his presence and the strength of his hand holding hers. She felt a deep gratitude for the night, for the trust, for the courage that had brought them to this moment. She understood that life sometimes gives rare opportunities, moments that demand bravery, that test the heart, and that offer the chance to embrace a love that can change everything. The wind moved gently over the plains, carrying the sounds of the village fading behind them, the whispers of the night, and the promise of a new day. She felt alive in a way she had never known, every sense heightened, every emotion amplified. The dawn had come, and with it, the choice that would define her life. She had made her decision, and she would never look back. The warrior glanced at her again, seeing the resolve and courage in her eyes, and knew that she had chosen not just love, but life, adventure, and the unknown with trust and bravery. Together, they rode into the morning light, side by side, hearts aligned, spirits intertwined, and the world before them full of possibility. And in that quiet, golden moment, she realized that sometimes life asks us to leap into the unknown, to trust our hearts, and to choose love even when it is uncertain. That leap, she understood, was what made life meaningful, magical, and unforgettable. The sun had fully risen, casting warm golden light across the endless plains. The village they had left behind was now only a memory, the smoke from the teepees fading into the morning sky. The young woman sat tall in the saddle, her heart full of a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. She had stepped into the unknown hours before, and now, as the first day of her new life began, she felt the full weight and the full wonder of the choice she had made. The Lakota warrior rode beside her, steady and calm. Every movement he made seemed to anchor her, giving her the courage to face the challenges of the day ahead. Though they were strangers in the morning hours, in that moment they were partners, connected not only by the bond of the night before, but by the choice they had made together. She realized that life with him would not be simple. There would be hard days, long days on the plains, and moments of struggle that she had never faced before. Yet the thought of facing them together gave her a sense of hope and determination she had never known. As they rode through the tall grasses, she took in the beauty of the land. The plains stretched endlessly, dotted with wild flowers and the gentle shapes of distant hills. The wind moved over the grass, carrying the smell of earth, the faint scent of water from a river nearby, and the soft sounds of life waking around them. Everything felt alive and vibrant. She understood now that this land was not just a backdrop for their lives. It was a part of them, a living presence that demanded respect, courage, and connection. He spoke to her quietly, telling her about the places they would visit, the traditions of the tribe, and the ways of the plains. He spoke of hunting, tracking, and the rhythms of life that guided his people. She listened intently, absorbing every word, every detail, every lesson. She realized that learning this new life would take patience, humility, and effort, but she was ready. The challenge did not frighten her, it excited her. They arrived at a river that glimmered in the morning sunlight. He helped her guide her horse to the water, showing her how to move with balance and confidence. She laughed softly as the cool water splashed over her hands and the horse's muzzle, and she felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. The laughter echoed across the plains, a bright, joyful sound that seemed to chase away the last traces of fear. After the river, they set out to join the tribe, who had paused for the morning meal. The young woman watched as the members of the Lakota worked together seamlessly, preparing food, tending to the animals and readying supplies for the journey ahead. There was a rhythm to their lives, a balance between effort and rest, work and celebration. She realized that this world, though unfamiliar, was filled with harmony and purpose. She felt a quiet pride in knowing that she had chosen to be part of it. As the day continued, she began to learn the small tasks that were part of the tribe's daily life. She helped gather water, assisted with simple chores, and learned the meanings behind the rituals she observed. Each task was a lesson, each action a step deeper into a life she had never imagined. She stumbled at times, unsure of herself, but he was always near, offering guidance without condescension, encouragement without impatience. She felt the bond between them growing stronger with each shared task, each glance, each quiet moment of understanding. In the afternoon, they sat together on a small hill overlooking the plains. The sun was high, the wind gentle, and the world seemed at peace. He turned to her and spoke softly. "You have made a choice that few would dare to make. You left everything familiar to follow your heart. That courage will guide you through life, through challenges, and through love." She looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and affection. "I was scared," she admitted, "but when I looked at you, when I felt the night we shared, I knew I had to follow. I didn't want to lose this chance, even if I didn't know what would happen next." He smiled, a warm and steady smile that made her feel safe and understood. "Love is not about knowing the future," he said. "It is about trusting the moment, trusting each other, and having courage when the world asks you to take a leap. You have done that, and that is why we are here together today." As the days passed, she learned more about the life of the tribe. She learned how to track animals across the plains, how to recognize the signs of weather, and how to help with the daily work that kept the tribe strong and united. At first, every task seemed difficult, every movement strange, but slowly she became confident, feeling more at home with each passing day. She discovered a strength within herself that she had never known, a resilience born of necessity and love. Evenings were spent around the fire, sharing stories, songs, and laughter with the tribe. She found joy in these moments, realizing that community, connection, and shared experience were as important as love between two people. The young warrior stayed close, teaching her, guiding her, and sharing his own stories. Each night, as the firelight danced across their faces, she felt the bond between them deepen, rooted not only in attraction but in respect, trust, and shared courage. Seasons changed, and with them, their lives grew richer. She learned the patterns of the land, the rhythms of hunting and gathering, the ways to live in harmony with nature. She came to understand the wisdom of the elders, the strength of the young warriors, and the gentle care of the women who guided the community. She realized that choosing love had brought her not just a companion, but a family, a purpose, and a life filled with meaning she had never imagined. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the plains, painting the sky with gold and pink, she stood beside the warrior once again. They watched the horizon together, feeling the wind move through their hair and the grasses sway around them. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that the choice she had made was right. She had risked the unknown, trusted her heart, and found a life that was vibrant, meaningful, and full of love. "I can't believe how much my life has changed in such a short time," she said softly. He turned to her, his eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. "Sometimes," he said, "life gives us moments that demand courage. You faced that moment, and now you live the life you chose. It will not always be easy, but it will always be real, full, and worth it." She thought back to the night she had arrived in the village, nervous and unsure, and she marveled at how far she had come. From fear and hesitation to courage and love, she had transformed in ways she could never have predicted. The plains stretched endlessly before them, a symbol of freedom, adventure, and possibility. She realized that life was not about certainty, but about the choices we make, the courage we summon, and the love we embrace. She had chosen love, and in doing so she had chosen a life full of meaning, connection, and joy. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, she felt the wind on her face and the warmth of the warrior beside her. She understood that the path ahead would have challenges, but it would also have wonder, growth, and moments of beauty that could only be discovered by stepping into the unknown. The plains, the tribe, and the bond they shared were now her world, and she welcomed it fully. And as the night deepened, with the firelight of the camp reflecting in the eyes of the people around her, she realized that the choice she had made was more than a single act of courage. It was the beginning of a life that was hers to live, rich with love, connection, and the wisdom that comes from trusting the heart. She leaned slightly toward the warrior, feeling the strength of his hand in hers, and knew that together they could face whatever the plains, the seasons, or life itself would bring. Their journey was just beginning, and she welcomed it with open arms and an open heart. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the sounds of laughter, conversation, and the quiet rhythm of life. She felt herself part of something larger than herself, a world full of love, challenge, and purpose. She realized that sometimes the heart knows the path, even when the mind is afraid, and that choosing love can change everything, giving a life of depth, meaning, and unforgettable joy. As the night settled fully over the plains, the young woman understood that she had found more than love. She had found courage, belonging, and the life she had always longed for. The horizon stretched endlessly before them, full of possibility, and she smiled, knowing that every step she took with him would be guided by trust, love, and the courage to embrace the unknown. And so life continued on the plains, full of challenges, full of beauty, and full of love, as the young woman and the Lakota warrior faced each day together, stronger, braver, and deeply connected, bound by a night of magic, a choice of courage, and a love that would last a lifetime.